Hello, guys and gals, me Mudahar, and age is just one of those things that man cannot escape from. As time marches forward, we get closer and closer to the grave. And I want to start this video off on a negative basis. Getting old is actually fun, okay? You get new experiences, you move on with your life, you start a bunch of new things, but you realize as you get older, things tend to die. And one of the things that died after 20 years of operations was Romhacking.net. Now you might be like, well, what is this? The thing about Romhacking.net is if you're somebody like me in the retro gaming sphere, somebody who grew up playing old school Japanese role-playing games on the Super Nintendo, the Genesis, back in the PlayStation 1, you probably remember that you missed out on a whole bunch of games because they were released in Japan. Now, you had two options back then, okay? You could either learn Japanese, which is easier said than done, okay? Trust me, I've tried. I couldn't get past Omaiwomo Shinderu, all right, okay? Or Nandayo or Samurai or any of that stuff. Or the second option is to hope that somebody translates the game that you're playing and releases a ROM hack file. Yeah, that's how your boy played games from Japan. So romhacking.net is a website where you can download plenty of translations for various games. Translations that were still being made up until last month, okay? So we're talking translations that go to multiple languages, like English, like Greek, like Spanish, like Italian, like Portuguese. Are you somebody from Brazil or Portugal that wanted to play, the Smurfs, for instance, and you were like, damn, how do I translate this Smurf stuff? I almost said sperm, by the way. Well, somebody would actually translate everything in the game from English all the way to Portuguese, so our Portuguese friends could play some fucking Smurfs. And that's pretty much how the whole story kind of cracked out, okay? That's pretty much what it is. But beyond just translating video games, the more important thing is also, creating new levels or new experiences or ROM hacking game where you can convert it to something entirely different. I made a video 2 days ago, Haunted Gaming actually, yeah, I know. Old series from us where, I looked at the Mario ARG, the creepypasta, and the sequel to that creepypasta in a more distinct light. And I looked at how it was effectively solved as being some, young person story that they wrote. But with that was a ROM hack for a game known as, Mario, right? The Mario creepypasta. They ROM hacked Super Mario World. They released a patch file on the internet. You grab the patch file, you put it onto a ROM of Super Mario World, and you can play a different, creepier version of what is that Nintendo classic. So there is a lot to do. There are other hacks that we have seen on my channel. For instance, if you remember about a year, maybe 2 years ago, I looked at Silent Hill, Grand Theft Auto, Vice City, one of these lost media Xbox ISO files that were put up on the Internet Archive. I grabbed it, put it in an emulator, and actually played a classic Grand Theft Auto Vice City total conversion mod. Yeah, these are things that obviously extend the life of a video game. If you ever wondered how games like Skyrim or games like Fallout are still played to this day, even Grand Theft Auto, it's not just their single player, carrying them over. It's that modifications exist. ROM hacking is but a version of that, except for far older games. So the reason Blood is yapping about that is, unfortunately, August 1st, they did in fact get shut down. Now, one of the people here, Nightcrawler, actually said, it's been a good near 20-year run, but for various reasons, it's time to wind things down. The site achieved almost everything it set out to do and far exceeded it. We've joined and translated communities together for the first time ever, okay? We outlasted and eclipsed ROM hacking sites that came before us. We brought ROM hacking from niche and fragmented to global and centralized. We assembled the largest force of ROM hackers on the planet. We brought learning resources and accessibility to a much wider range of people. And they made major progress legitimizing and pulling ROM hacking from underground, dark web type material to something much more accepted by the mainstream. I wouldn't say it was dark webbish. I would just say that this existed on like old school 90s forums, and you made a much better website that brought people together. So immediately, a lot of people started to wonder, oh my God, did they get DMCA'd after like 2 decades by Nintendo? No, they actually never got hit by any lawyer or legal entity. Things sure have changed since the beginning days. I miss the times when I was able to interact with a smaller group of supportive people to collaborate with rather than the entire world. Having gone from an unknown fledgling site to an infinitely growing and globally known, one made sustainability very challenging. The site became so busy with 24/7 use, endless queues, and an endless inbox, it's a very different world than it was in 2005. Copyright pressures increased dramatically with takedowns and legal burdens. The site shifted from serving mostly contributing humans to bots and overzealous people abusing resources. They drowned everybody else out. The need for the site has lessened over time, and there are now many options for community discussions, open source projects, and file storage across the internet. For a while, I was looking to find a successor within the circles of site supporters, and they asked several potential people, but the stars did not align. Nobody really wanted to apparently keep this going from inside. I was finally looking to wind things down at the end of last year. I wanted to provide the site database and file archive to the general public, and at that time, an internal group suddenly emerged with an offer to help continue the site. I questioned their intentions, but I thought it could prove to be more community-friendly path forward. However, it turned out to be the opposite. We had a rocky phase 1, moving the downloads into their possession. When I went to startup phase 2, it sounds like a Marvel movie, Jesus, I discovered a more dishonest and hate-filled group. I learned that I had been dehumanized for a very long time. My personal details had been given out. Several deceitful plots had been made to cut me out and drop a bomb like I am a target to destroy. My family has seen this, and after discussion, we are immediately ceasing all related site operations. We are cutting ties to Discord and Twitter social media outlets, and will no further have contact with these individuals. Lines were crossed. I had hoped this community especially would have learned from what happened to Nier. This behavior is not okay for handling disagreements, miscommunications, anger, or anything else. So yeah, towards the latter half of it, obviously they mentioned a programmer known as Nier. I'm not equipped to really talk about this, but yeah, it was somebody that has in fact taken their own life. Very talented individual. Not exactly going to be jumping too far into that rabbit hole down there, but there have been, I guess you could say, serious behind-the-scenes situations that have basically caused the implosion of one of the largest ROM sharing groups out there. Now, in terms of preservation, the entirety of the website's archives, romhacking.net, was actually uploaded in a torrent entirely onto the Internet Archive. So if you are somebody that wants to download this for yourself, it is, from my understanding, a roughly 12 gigabyte size. So you can just download this. I've already downloaded it, put it into a cloud server, so I have access to their entire site archive just within a couple of clicks at my house. So yeah, it is something that if you are interested in preserving, absolutely go for. There have been people sharing ROMs on the other hand, so again, my view on sharing ROMs in general when it comes to the internet, probably shouldn't be doing that, considering that most of these websites will probably chew you alive. Most of the legal teams around the world would salivate if you're distributing their games at all. Now, because of this situation and the wild nature of it, obviously there were a bunch of leaks that ended up actually coming out from apparently Discord servers. For instance, this one user to the ROM hacking community said, for those who haven't heard, the site Romhacking is winding down and switched to read-only mode. To the best of our knowledge, the content on the site will remain available for download. Additionally, while we aren't going anywhere, the Discord server is no longer affiliated with the website or its ownership. It's an end of the era, and it's a bittersweet thing. Problems were mounting, baggage was accumulating, and relationships were souring. But this is a community built by builders and doers. So what they wanted to address was some of the remarks, right? The personal details had been given out, several deceitful plots. I mean, what we are talking about is doxing and what veers into legitimate harassment, which obviously no one condones. So what they said was, things have been rocky between site staff and Discord for a while. And while Discord staff is exploring possible ways forward, likely including severing the relationship with the exhausting site and its ownership, we are deeply confused and disappointed by the accusation of doxing and the implication that we've been threatening. We categorically reject the allegations. So realistically, why would one institution of game preservation, game retro, ROM hacking actually end imploding on itself? Why would it do that? So I decided to look at other members of this community. One of those members belonged to a group known as Aeon Genesis. Now, Aeon Genesis is a name you probably know of if you actually follow a lot of these RPGs and Japanese games that you've been wanting translations to. One of them in particular is the Shin Megami Tensei series. Now, I like Shin Megami Tensei, and I'll be the first one to say it. Atlas, you need to do a whole fucking job and a half bringing your catalog over, properly translated, by the way. So, when I made a haunted gaming video, and this has to be like over 5 years ago at this point, I was playing the Shin Megami Tensei, which basically was a game where you effectively, the concept of God was not really all that common in a lot of these lighthearted JRPGs. This is a game that allowed you to translate one of the best JRPGs of its time all the way over for English. And Aeon Genesis was a group that brought this over, and this is by far the only way I actually managed to play Shin Megami Tensei 2, and, well, halfway of Shin Megami Tensei if. But that's kind of the importance of this ROM hacking community. Anyways, an individual in this community known as Gideon G actually ended up jumping into it and started blaming Nightcrawler. So according to Gideon G from the Aeon Genesis organization, he says, hey, I know I don't post much on co-hosts, but Romhacking.net imploding is seismic, so resharing. This is largely copy-pasted from other socials, so it won't contain anything you may not have seen. By now, you've probably seen that Romhacking.net is effectively dead. In the end, it's probably for the best. The site was built in the mid-aughts, and its backend hadn't been re-engineered, well, ever. Consequently, it was costing the administrator hundreds of dollars per month. Nightcrawler, the admin, was burnt out, and I sympathize. I'm burnt out too. But he existed as a single point of failure for the site and exerted iron-fisted control over community-created content. So here the allegation is you've got fucking the most fascist controlling dictator on community-generated content. It's crazy. Categorically refused basically all offers to help over the last decade. Remember all those times the site went down and stayed down for days at a time? It's because nobody had NC's contact information. Only he could bring the site back up, and whenever anyone pointed out the situation was less than ideal, they were rebuffed. In December 23rd, NC posted an imminent shutdown. Staff ordered to help. It was initially refused. The site was originally going to just be turned off. No archive, no handoff, nothing. 20 years of all of our community's efforts apparently just gone. NC claimed to want a successor to build a new site, but his requirements were unrealistic by any measure. Said successor would have needed to have passion for the hobby, have donated to the site in the past several years, despite no donations being taken, and the technical know-how to actually administer an archival platform of RHDN size. A real unicorn, of course. None presented themselves, and no effort was ever actually made to seek one out. You know what's insane about this, too? I believe in projects like this so much. I'm not joking. To this day, right now, if the staff behind romhacking.net just came out to us, to my company, straight up, and we're like, hey, can you host this? We would actually just do this for free. We would just, whatever money we would make on YouTube, we would just take, obviously, the portion of that and just run it for site hosting. Like, that is something that I am 100% willing to do because I believe in these communities so much. I have talked and made tons of videos on emulations, ROM hacking. Fuck, even during Haunted Gaming, the amount of ROM hacks that we would cover. I mean, this is, I have my platform, like part of my platform's thanks and appreciation comes from a lot of the content that the community has generated over the last 20 years. To see it gone and be in shambles is actually, it hurts on a personal level, to be honest with you. So after lengthy negotiations, NC eventually acquiesced to handing off Data Crystal and to swapping out the file-serving backend with an S3 bucket as an initial transition step while a replacement could be built. It'll help them relieve the cost burden. It took a lot of convincing, and I don't think he understood the S3 was way more cost-effective than the WAV files were currently being served. At one point he posted, sending thumb drives to Canada doesn't help. Like, you couldn't just upload the files into a bucket, obviously. One real kick in the teeth came after switching the backend to Amazon Web Services S3. AWS was the initial pick because it's obvious that if something didn't happen fast, the site would die, and AWS was the easiest initial choice. Discord staff set up the S3 bucket and had to walk NC through the changes that needed to be made on the backend. To help reduce the financial burden on NC, Discord staff gladly offered to pay the S3 bill to the tune of $200 or so per month, which is normal for anything AWS related, from my understanding and experience. After some further research, it became apparent that Discord staff could save a significant amount of money by changing S3 providers. A new bucket was set up, but when the time came to make the change, NC refused to do it, even though he was not the one footing the bill. So the staff grew increasingly frustrated. Days would pass without a response. He refused to join the Discord to talk solutions in real time. Did we vent in private? Sure. Did we dox or threaten? Hell no. And frankly, I'm livid at even the suggestion that we did. I'm even angrier at the comparisons being drawn between disgruntled staff and the scumsuckers that drove Nier to end their life. What happened to Nier is an absolute tragedy, and I sincerely hope that a special place in hell for the human garbage that tormented them. So yeah, mourn for RHDN, but this is not the outcome anybody wanted. And Nightcrawler is not the victim here. So realistically, what has kind of happened in this situation from all that I'm reading is just straight up the most toxic, pointless drama that had to occur. And ultimately, the cost of it is the retro gaming community, who have already pretty much lost a crap ton of shit in the last 12 months. I don't think people need this at all. So for anybody who obviously is like, man, where do I get ROM hacks now? There's still plenty of websites you can go to for ROM hacks all over the world. For instance, MetroidConstruction.com is personally a website that I've used for, well, you guessed it, Metroid hacks. About 696 of them, by the way. So again, to move in forward, obviously the other, I guess competing website in this situation was Romhacking, romhacks.org. And again, they're also sharing ROM hacks such as Majora's Mask, for instance, Pumpkin Tower, which, again, these are ROM hacks to provide quality of life features, updates, big changes to games, translation, so on and so forth. And even the competitor here has addressed the situation. For instance, posted by RHDO, he said that he made romhacks.org to address some things that he didn't like about romhacking.net. I made it for those who wanted to use it. Some did, most didn't. Welp. When I first made it public, it was almost ready. A group of people quickly joined Discord and helped me with moderation, mostly Kanda Wantu and another person. I knew Kondo from his fast ROM hacks. I didn't know the other person. Turns out they had beef with RHDN. I cannot believe there is this much interpersonal bullshit between ROM hacking websites. God damn. It's insane. I guess it's my fault for not doing background checks on people. It's a ROM hacking website, not the federal U.S. government. Jesus. This was a year ago, and I don't remember exactly all the details, but at some point it surfaced that the person made a script to increase download counters and was actually pretty proud of it. So yeah, insane. This somehow morphed into people believing I took romhacking.net databases and used it to make romhacks.org, which I never did. And if you actually look at romhacks.org, you'll see the hacks we have are manual submissions by the creators, minus a handful of entries I manually created to test while developing the site. I woke up to those news without the slightest idea of what was going on. Getting people to use the site was already a hard task, and now this. Needless to say, that person was removed from the moderation team, but it didn't solve the problem. We were already the bad guys, and no matter what I said, it didn't count. So all of my work was for nothing, got really depressed, stopped working on it altogether. Even now, a year later, people are reluctant to use this website, either because of that incident or because I, Spike, run CD Romance, a site that hosts pre-patched ROM hacks, and that's the worst thing you can do. Yeah, this whole community I've learned throughout researching this one fall is actually pretty eye-opening. I did not expect this much interpersonal conflict for people operating ROM hacking websites. What I am actually more interested in is the idea of preserving these massive projects. Look, at the end of the day, when it comes to ROM hacks and game translations and preservation, this is one very, very important pillar of why the gaming community is where it's at. A lot of these games are popular because of the massive amount of work that has gone into reworking them, to translating them, to bring them to entire new audiences, or to modify and patch these games long after the development teams have existed for these kind of projects. And I think losing 20 years of history, not really losing, but having an institution shut down is a sad thing, Like I said in the beginning, we get older. But to look at the interpersonal nonsense of this, like I said, I would still have my offer up where I would love to host this website and keep providing the service, legally, of course, for the people around in the world to constantly consume and enjoy. But ladies and gentlemen, that's pretty much what it comes down to. ROM hacking, one of the biggest institutions, has been shut down. And why? Not because of doxing, it seems, but just because of interpersonal neat drama that I did not expect walking into this. Jesus Christ. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. I am out.